Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Garrett Duvall with Phillips Funeral Home, and on behalf of Steve's family, I'd like to thank everyone who's here today to join in this very important time, to pause, to reflect, and to remember on Steve's life. Before we begin, I would like to ask if you do have a cell phone, just out of respect, if you want to silence your phone. And I have the distinct honor of inviting Nikki to come forward. There's no one that knows Steve better than Nikki. So there's no one better to honor, to eulogize, and commemorate his life. So this is a very honorable task, and I would say that each and every one of us here today are very impressed to behind you, Nikki, to do this and to honor Steve.
All right, here we go. All right. How do you even begin to form words worthy of a person who was the breath that taught your heart how to beat? Steve and I met when we were still so young. I was 21, he was 25. We were two kids standing at the threshold of a life we could not yet comprehend. And then suddenly, nearly 24 years unfolded between us. That was 52% of my life, 100% of Bella's life, 52% of my breaths, 100% of Bella's childhood laughter. Every ordinary Tuesday, every chaotic morning, every quiet night, nothing spectacular except that we were together. There was no greater love than the one that lived inside the three of us. It was messy, it was grand, it was loud, it was tender, and it was built from the ordinary moments. Shared glances, inside jokes, grocery rides, car rides, laughter echoing for no reason at all. Those moments strung themselves together day by day, year by year, until they became the most breathtaking tapestry of a life lived fully and fiercely. Grief is not here today because something went wrong. Grief is here because love was here first. Love as a wife, as a daughter, as a brother, as a friend, as a colleague, love was here in every role Steve stepped into, in every life he touched. Grief is simply love, refusing to be silent. The depth of our pain is not a tragedy. It is a testimony. And it's proof of how deeply Steve rooted himself in our lives, in our routines, our laughter, our memories, our very sense of home. He did not pass through lightly. He planted himself fully, deeply, and permanently. And when someone becomes so woven into your life, their absence is seismic. But even as we tremble in heartbreak, I need you to understand something devastating and holy. This grief we feel is love transformed. It is the same love, the same devotion, the same bond. It just simply no longer has a physical place to land. Steve's body fell away, yes, but his soul did not disappear. It expanded, it ascended, and it became less confined by a body that could no longer contain his magnitude. I told Bella during his final days, and I now believe with every fiber of my being, it may have looked like his body was fading, but his soul, his spirit was growing bigger and bigger. Like a caterpillar dissolving inside of a cocoon, not dying, transforming. What looked like decline was ascension. What looked like loss was expansion. Now that spirit, that laughter, that love, that unmistakable presence is everywhere. In Bella's courage, in my breath, in the stories that we will tell for the rest of our lives, in the quiet moments we carry forward. Today, we are not just honoring a life that ended, we are also holding a love that refuses to. And how we carry that love, how we give it away, how we let it soften us instead of harden us, and that becomes a living continuation of Steve's legacy. Because a man is not measured only by the days he lives, but by the lives he changed within those days. So today we honor them all, the 48 years and 351 days. The 17,883 sunrises he greeted, the thousands of ordinary moments he transformed into extraordinary ones simply by showing up, loving fiercely, laughing that goofy, unforgettable laugh, 17,883 days, and somehow still not enough. Okay, so I need to talk about Steve's true soulmate in life. It was food. It was food. Thanks. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that this man woke up thinking about food. He planned his day around food, and he went to sleep mentally reviewing the meal like a sports commentator replaying the highlights. Food was not just a meal to Steve, it was an event, a ceremony, it was a full contact sport. Watching Steve eat, especially in the early days when I first met him, was honestly kind of terrifying and impressive all at once. He would sit down quietly, prepare like a surgeon about to operate a delicate operation, silverware lined up with precision, sauces arranged in a row, elbows out, eyes focused, and then the food arrived, and down he went like a lion taking down its fresh catch on the Serengeti. When we were first dating, I made the grave mistake of casually reaching over and taking a bite off his plate. Now, at this point, I had not yet earned his love, and he slowly lifted his head, and then that Irish fire shot out of his eyes like lasers. Because you see, Steve did not just eat food, he had a system. He had a whole system. He would analyze everything on his plate like a flavor architect, pairing bites together for maximum impact. And when I took that bite, I didn't just steal food, I destroyed his ratio. And you could actually see his brain short circuit a little bit. I remember the first time, I think years later, when he actually offered me a bite from his plate, and I was like, oh my God, like, he loves me, this is it, this is true commitment. Because with Steve, sharing food wasn't just sharing food, he was actually sharing his soul. Now, apparently, before I met him, I had been eating incorrectly my entire life, which was shocking news to me because I survived 21 years just fine. But I used to eat one category at a time, all the meat, and then the potatoes, and then the vegetables, and he informed me repeatedly and passionately that this was completely unacceptable behavior. The flavor architect would say, Nick, you can't just eat one thing at a time, you have to combine bites, you need a balance. And he took it so seriously that I was never allowed to eat the same again. And that's a true story. And thank God he saved me, because I don't know how I would ever made it in this life without his intervention. Apparently, I also ate treats wrong. So, like, I love to eat a Reese's peanut butter cup. You eat the outside, then the top, then the middle. And his self-appointed CEO of food correctness himself would tell me, like, no, just bite it. What are you doing? You're doing it all wrong. And same thing with ice cream cones. He would bark at me. What are you, a bird? Stop taking those mouse bites. Just put it in your mouth. Every bite had to be full commitment, no hesitation. Another thing about Steve, he didn't just love to eat, he actually loved to eat with people. If it was breakfast time, we were eating breakfast. If you said, I'm not really hungry, you could see a little small crack in his brain. That wasn't really an option. He'd be like, what do you mean you're not hungry? It's breakfast time. This is what we do. We eat breakfast. But it wasn't just about food. It was about togetherness, a full table, Bella and me there, because Steve, it wasn't just a meal unless we were all in it. And then there were these berry piles. I don't even know when this started. One day years ago, he washed a bunch of berries and left them on the counter. And throughout the day, he'd like bop around the kitchen, grabbing them here and there like a foraging little happy squirrel. And there were berry piles all over our kitchen. And he would happily stroll by, grab a handful, and keep moving. And meanwhile, I'm behind him at night cleaning all the juice off the counter. Every night, every single night. Bella can attest to that. But he was happy and content, just snacking and smiling and living his best berry pile life. Timing was another sacred thing to him. First thing in the morning, Nick, when do you think you'll be ready to eat? I need to plan my day. So we would just finish breakfast dishes, and he'd already be like, so what's the lunch plan? Around noon, 12:15, 12:07, like I need a time. And his day was basically eat, snack, eat again, ask about the next meal, repeat. Steve also deeply believed in what he called the last bite. He would pair these strategic bites together so that his meal was absolute perfection and that last bite was perfect. And he'd sit there, what flavor do I want to end on? This is important. This is like legacy work here. And if you offered him another bite after he had finished, he would refuse. Nope, I've got the flavor in my mouth that I want, he would say. And after he taught me the secret art of the last bite, he would pretend to then ruin mine for sport. He'd fake slap it out of my hand or take it and eat it himself, and then he'd flash that shit grin and say, "You love it. You love this." And the worst part is I did. It was kind of funny. Ordering food with Steve was an Olympic-level event. Nothing, and I mean nothing, was ordered as is. Sauces on the sides, separate bowls, toast lightly buttered to the edges, sesame chicken extra crispy, wings extra crispy and extra saucy. Although he always made me order the wings because when someone teased him once about saying extra saucy, he never emotionally recovered from that. And then there was the lobster from Maine. Watching Steve eat lobster was less of a meal and more of a full contact splash zone experience. Claws flying, juice everywhere, arms covered. And Bella reminds us the whole time that he'd have the biggest grin on his face saying, "Man, I love this." Even near the end, when words were few and his body was tired, his love for food, his love for life never faded. Joe made him a steak and mussels for his last real meal. I was helping him eat, and he very clearly pointed for more. He even slapped my hand when I wasn't getting it in there fast enough. But the steak and mussels couldn't be separated. They needed to be together perfectly because his last bite mattered, even at the end. I mean, not too many people give a eulogy and spend this much time talking about food. And I actually asked myself while writing this, I thought, is Steve's whole life really food? And the answer is yes and no, because it wasn't just food, it was an experience. It was presence, it was joy. He used to talk about his flavor suckers, and that was his exact words, and how food were a full sensory explosion. And you could hear him actually sucking and enjoying every bite, the chewing, the savoring, the satisfied little sounds. And honestly, sometimes it drove me nuts. Actually, all the time. And the sucking noises were a lot. The berry piles were a lot. The scheduling meetings at lunch at 9 a.m. was a lot. He planned his summers around chicken barbecues, and we were always stopping at taco trucks, and we spent more money on food than our mortgage. But I see it differently now. He wasn't just eating, he was living. He was fully presently and intentionally living. And he was squeezing every ounce of ordinary joy out of ordinary moments that most of us just rush right past. He taught me that life is meant to be tasted, savored, and shared. And maybe that is just one of the lessons he leaves us. Find extraordinary joy in the ordinary. Be present and never, ever waste the last bite. So when I first met Steve, I truly had no idea what I was getting myself into. Now, let me set the scene. I was pretty young. I was mostly sweet, pretty innocent, and Steve was fresh off of what can be only described as a decade-long period of questionable decision-making. And he had a very outstanding cast of characters. And I'm not going to share everything here, but some stories are better suited for later, perhaps at the Elks after this, where plausible deniability is stronger and microphones are not involved. But I'll give you a taste. Because the first thing Steve did when we started dating was not tell me about his hopes, his dreams, or his 5-year plans. Nope, he gave me the roll call. It was nicknames and last names, like he was listing off members of an underground league. There was Holmes, who once grew out a toenail to a point for a single kick in a fight. Then there was Tough Nuts, a great friend who lived in Maryland, construction and college squatting days with Steve. Then came the legend of the green Nissan. This truck, from what I gathered, had been refinanced approximately 47 times, and then just to add drama, it was stolen right in front of him. And of course, Steve, because he was Steve, attempted to chase the thief down on street on foot. Then there was Chap and Snail, with whom he lived during what can be described as a spiritually enlightening phase, which apparently included seeing some floating orbs or something like that. Soon I met Joey and his alter ego, Lance Buellman, because apparently Joey wasn't just Joey. He was also Lance Buellman. Professional wakeboarder, visionary, and co-founder of a fictional extreme sports empire along Steve's own alter ego, Skip Kipling. So I was there newly dating this mad, and suddenly I'm witnessing full-blown role-playing interviews like ESPN just arrived to cover the Seneca Lake Wakeboarding Championships. Skip, are you here on Seneca for the competition? Nice move out there, Lance. Real smooth on that glassy water. And they were fully committed method acting. There was no notes. And honestly, it was hysterical. Because underneath all of that was pure joy, pure imagination. Grown men refusing to let go of their inner kids who just wanted summer, sun, and perfect wakes forever. The eternal search for boat gas money and the perfect chicken barbecue, of course. And then there were the childhood stories, which honestly explain so much. He has 3 older siblings, Rick, Chandra, Sis, and Jeff. And Rick was about 14 years older, which meant Steve was basically their live-in entertainment system. They would hold him upside down by his legs and let the dog lick his face so he couldn't escape. When he was in his little jolly jumper, apparently they'd pull back the strings just to watch him like fling back. And his mom used to tell me that there weren't many pictures of little Stevie without bruises on his head, which honestly tracks. And in her eyes, little Stevie could do absolutely no wrong. When he didn't feel well, she'd offer to make him her famous chocolate sauce. And to this day, that sentence, "Do you need me to make chocolate sauce?" feels like the purest definition of motherly love. And then there were the stories of his dad taking him out to eat, a shared love of food that clearly became genetic destiny. When Steve and his dad sat down at a restaurant together, it was like watching 2 seasoned professionals preparing for a championship round. Silverware lines, glasses inspected, napkins ready. They were not there to play, they were there to eat. But beyond all of the wild stories, the nicknames, the laughter, the fire in his belly, there was something even more defining about Steve. It was connection. Everyone called him Stevie. And not just Stevie, it was always, "Stevie!" everywhere. Stevie! You could not walk anywhere with him, grocery store, gym, sidelines, coffee shop, without someone lighting up, calling his name, stopping him mid-step just to talk. And he always stopped, and he always turned fully towards them, and he always made them feel like they were the most important person in that moment, because they were. He loved people. He loved stories. He loved that invisible thread that ties one human heart to another. He was the talker in our relationship, the connector, the bridge builder. Within minutes, he would find common ground. Lawn care, sports, food, it didn't matter what the topic was. He just wanted to understand you, to laugh with you, to share a moment of real human presence. And over the years, I watched something beautiful happen. He didn't just collect acquaintances. He transformed strangers into friends and friends into lifelong family. Before he passed, he started writing out his childhood memories for Bella. He didn't get to finish the whole story, but what he wrote is a treasure that will hold forever. He wrote about growing up on Bridge Street, joyful, surrounded by cousins, aunts, siblings, noise, love. He wrote about falling in love with sports early on, playing at the YMCA just like Bella did, unknowingly laying a foundation for a bond between them that would one day feel almost spiritual. He wrote about trips to his grandparents' house in Osceola, Pennsylvania, about Gregg Elementary, about the Cornells and the cabin, about slipping and falling and bending his finger at a 90-degree angle, actual true story, and then Adam had to run all the way back just to make sure he actually saw what he saw. He wrote about moving to Smith School, about hide and seek, kickball, wiffle ball, running outside until the sun went down and someone finally yelled for them to come home, about being thrown over a shoulder and carried to be introduced to a new group of people. He wrote about childhood in a way that made you realize his life was never about things. It was always about people and connection and being part of something bigger than himself. And that is the thread that runs through every chapter of his life. He did not just exist in rooms. He filled them with warmth. He did not just meet people. He made them feel seen. He did not just live. He connected deeply and unapologetically, heart to heart, life to life. So, Steve and I were together for about 5 years before we got married, and then another 5 years had passed before Bella was born. So we had 10 whole years of just the two of us. 10 years of adventures, and I thinking I understood him, and I absolutely did not. Because when we decided to have a baby, and apparently what I was actually growing was a miniature hyperactive Steve in my body, during my pregnancy, the ultrasound tech would put the wand on my stomach, and Bella would already be doing full karate kicks, true story, and twirls like she was training for the Olympics in there. And the tech would be like, wow, she's really active. And Steve would just beam with pride, and yep, that's my girl, she's ready. Bella inherited her dad's energy before she even entered the world. Now, when she was finally born, Steve was ecstatic. I had scheduled a C-section, I had a scheduled C-section, so we knew the day she was going to come into the world, the exact day, the exact time. And the anesthesiologist told Steve, make sure you get ready, take a picture, she's coming. And of course, in the most Steve move ever, he accidentally turned the camera off right at that exact moment. But he scrambled, got it back on, and then she cried. That first little scream filled the room. That was good, cue baby. That's good, thank you, Lily. And I will never forget that look on his face. Pure awe, pure joy, pure, our baby is here. Now, let me paint the full picture of that moment. So it's around 8 a.m. when we start. By early afternoon, we were back in the room. And somewhere around 1 or 2 p.m., I see it begin. The signs, the subtle tremor, the beads of sweat on his forehead. The man was getting the food shakes. Now, keep in mind, I had just had a whole child surgically removed from my body, but Steve, having not eaten, was in true crisis. You could literally see him trying to balance his love for us with his primal call of chicken wings echoing in the distance. And I'm pretty sure I finally rolled my eyes at one point and said, just go get food. Minutes later, he returned triumphant with wings, extra crispy, extra saucy, exactly how he liked them. Plopped down in the corner of the hospital room and just went to work like a man who had survived something heroic himself. Probably finished with a satisfied phew, I needed that. Meanwhile, I'm laying there like, yes, Steve, I can only imagine what you've been through today. And honestly, that was us. Lots of love with perfectly balanced chaos. Bella, from the start, pure firecracker energy. She walked at 10 months, but really she never walked. She ran everywhere all the time, laps around the outside of the house. We yelled, run, Forrest, run, so many times. It should have been our family motto. People would say, wow, she's going to sleep great tonight. And I would just stare at them like, have you met Bella? She does not believe in sleep. She believes in life, just like her dad. And Steve, he was literally the best dad for a little girl like that. He ran with her, he played with her, chased her, drove her everywhere, made everything fun. She had him wrapped so tightly around her finger it was impressive. And thank goodness, because I could not physically keep up with those two. The first time we went to Old Orchard Beach, Bella was a toddler, and Steve and I were genuinely terrified. We stationed ourselves on opposite ends of the beach, and she would sprint back and forth to one of us, and the other would hurt her back like a border collie. We did this for hours. No sitting, no stroller. Strollers were apparently a violation of her human rights. She would scream like we were committing a crime if we ever even attempted to put her in it or even push it. So instead, she pushed it herself everywhere we went, little toddler, and strangers would walk by giving us judgmental looks like, wow, making the baby push the stroller, nice. And I'd glance at Steve like, Congrats, your genes, it's your fault. Bella absolutely got Steve's spunk, his humor, his athleticism, his fierce instincts to protect the people he loved. And yes, she also got his sweaty hands, the sweat hands as we call them. Steve ran on jet fuel, up at 4:30 a.m., bouncing around the house like he was entering a championship arena, and his hands were always clammy. At Thanksgiving at my grandma's house in our early years, none of my uncles ever wanted to stand next to Steve during grace because it meant holding his hand, and they would actually argue about it. Nope, I did it last year. It's your turn. He'd just laugh, that goofy laugh. Now, Bella has the same sweat hands, casually wiping them all over my face while I drive, just to pick on me like Steve would have done. So, it's true. So yes, the spunk has been there since birth. Bella, even as a very young girl, never wanted the party to end. Stephen often had to carry her out in full football mode while she fought like a championship boxer. She had that zest for life. She was and continues to be a miniature Steve. That was our life, loud, wild, hilarious, exhausting, beautiful. She has her dad's spunk since the moment she entered the world. But the truth is that Bella being born was the greatest turning point of our lives. Something in Steve shifted the moment he held her. He had always been the fun one, the friend, the life of the party. But when he became a father to a little girl, he softened in ways I could have never predicted. He would let me sleep and stay up rocking her in the quiet hours of the night. He called her his little owl because she'd carefully rock her back to sleep, lay her down, and her eyes would pop wide open, just like a tiny owl watching the night. He loved those baby naps with her curled on his chest. He'd just sit there, barely breathing, like he was holding the most sacred thing on earth. And when she started eating, he'd coo at her endlessly, giving her more snacks, because he loved how happy she looked, stuffing her cheeks like a little chipmunk. He'd kiss her chubber cheekers over and over, completely enchanted. Bella, you were never just his daughter. You were the visible, living piece of his heart walking outside of his body. You are the best part of him made into a person. And I need you to hear this with every cell of your being. You were the greatest gift your dad ever received. You were. And you were the greatest gift that I ever received. And you were the best of both of us. Our love, our laughter, our strength, our fire, all wrapped up into one extraordinary human. And as you grew older, you and your dad's bond only deepened. You became his little buddy, and he became your biggest buddy. Sometimes so much so that I'd have to remind them that I do not have two children in this house. But underneath the playful bickering was something profound. You gave him a purpose in a way that nothing else had. You sparked something deep inside him, a calling to be better, to do better, to leave the world kinder than he found it. Because loving you made him want to become the best version of himself. You were the best chapter, where his heart opened wider than it had ever before, and where his love became the kind of love that changes the world. So, when I first met Steve, I didn't really know him yet. And you know how new love is, that electric kind of energy where everything feels cinematic and magical. And then I watched him eat. He did not take bites. He hunted his meals into full predator mode. And then he had these earrings when I first met him, these little mini silver hoops. He had both ears pierced and wore them with the confidence of a man who believed he was the coolest guy in the room. And he was, even when he absolutely was not. But the laugh. You know what I'm talking about, the laugh. The first time I heard it, I genuinely thought I was being pranked. Truly did. I was like, I looked around like, is this like a hidden camera thing? Because this cannot be this guy's laugh. because that laugh is not a normal laugh. It starts out with this high pitch, and then his mouth opens really wide, wider than you think is possible, and the front teeth kind of come out. And then you'd get like the full body cackle and the full body can't breathe, head thrown back, soul leaving his body type of jiggle. And sometimes there'd be that little wheeze at the end. And if he was watching a movie, he'd mumble the lines to himself with the characters while laughing. And then if the joke really hit, you'd get that whisper, reverent, ha, fudge, at the end, like he had just witnessed a comedic second coming, only he didn't say fudge. People would love to watch funny movies with him just to hear his laugh. It was ridiculous, it was loud, it was completely, unmistakably Steve. And you couldn't help but laugh when watching him laugh. His joy was contagious, explosive. It filled the room. It filled you. And that laugh became one of my favorite sounds in the entire world. Now, early in our relationship, we spent years trying to understand each other because on paper, we made absolutely no sense. He was outward and social. I was more introverted and analytical. And yet there were these synchronicities, these little divine nudges that kept whispering, no, you two are exactly what each other needs. It took years for us to truly sync up, but when we did, we were magic. Now, when we first started dating, I warned him, you're going to have to meet my dad. And my dad, let's just say, he's not the type of man that you casually stroll up to. He's big, strong, outdoorsman energy, and at that time he owned an archery shop. So picture Steve, young, nervous, silver hoops, gleaming, walking into the shop full of bows and arrows. And he walks up and says, hi, I'm Steve Clarke, and I'm dating your daughter. I was not there, but I know my dad slowly looked up, stared him down, and in that moment, Steve's soul probably left his body and whispered, well, it's been a good run. I genuinely thought, okay, this is it, relationship's over. But it wasn't, because Steve, once he loved you, he was in fully, permanently, no exit plan. Now, let's talk about domestic life in our early years, because this man had drive, but home skills, developing, strong potential. Case in point, the bat incident. We were living on Sterling Street, and occasionally bats would get in the house. One day, he finds a bat upstairs. He hates bats. Actually, he claims he hates them. He's actually terrified of them. So what does he do? He puts on full hockey gear. This is a true story. Helmets, pads, the whole situation. Then he grabs a lacrosse stick and a garbage bag and says, go downstairs, I'm going to take care of this. So I go downstairs, trusting that I have chosen a brave protector, and a minute later I hear a scream, and not a normal scream, a higher pitch than his laugh scream, like a teenage girl possessed his body. And then suddenly he's not running down the stairs, he's flying down the stairs, the garbage bag billowing behind him like some sort of panic parachute. He hits the bottom, does a tuck and roll, pops up flailing, I hate bats, I hate bats, it touched me! And I just stood there and kind of cocked my head and widened my eyes and thought, yes, this is the man who will protect me in times of crisis. So I finally said, just give me the damn bag and the lacrosse stick. And I went upstairs and I got the bat. Another time we had just moved into a new house and we're putting up a new shower curtain. Now he cuts his finger opening the plastic. And there was a cut, but we have debated for years whether it was a cut or a cut. And I'm on the phone with ER trying to figure out directions just in case. Then I go back to look and I'm like, Steve, this is like a paper cut. And he starts fanning himself like a Southern belle, whispering, what do you do when you lose a lot of blood? Do you drink orange juice or something? And again, I did that head tilt and my eyes widened and I'm like, sure, darling, let me get you some orange juice. And from that day forward, anytime he was sick, injured, or slightly inconvenienced, I would lovingly ask, do you need some orange juice? Now, Steve loved to joke. especially early on, when he loved me deeply, but he didn't quite know how to show it, so he would pick on me like a fifth grade boy with a crush, and I'd roll my eyes and walk away, and he thought it was hilarious. But then there was this Abe Lincoln statue he got from family. It was really creepy. It was this dark-eyed statue, and it looked less like he was holding less like a scroll, more like a weapon, and he kept it positioned at the top of the stairs where the shadows made it look pretty terrifying all the time, and it scared the crap out of me. So one day while I'm in the bathroom, he decides to be funny, and he moves the Abe statue right outside the door, so when I open it, it would startle me. I open it, scream, and I don't have a cute little scream when you really scare me. I have a very full horror movie quality scream, blood curdling. Then I collapse, thinking my life is over. Abe came to get me, and he comes running, sees I'm okay, and then he starts laughing in my face, that goofy laugh. And we actually fought about that statue for years. Real arguments. I didn't want it. They were relationship level negotiations. Fast forward to a moving day. He forgot to secure it in the truck. It falls, it breaks. He opens the door devastated, and I start smiling. He goes, "You love this, don't you? You wanted this to happen. You never liked that statue." And I was like, yes. Yes and yes. We were young, ridiculous, and constantly sparring, complete with our own alter egos. So, I'm going to let you in on something. When he was really mad at me, I became Flicky. And when I was really mad at him, I called him TV. And when Flicky and TV were both showing up, that's when sparks flew. So one day, Bella heard him say, "Okay, Flicky, calm down." And she asked what it was, and we explained it. So later, a few days later, when I corrected her about something, she looked at me and said, "Okay, Flicky." I shot TV a glare, and the two of them just sat there gleefully plotting to lovingly torture me, which was often. But beneath all the teasing, all the jokes, all the ridiculous, beautiful chaos, Steve and I loved each other fiercely. What started as young, explosive love grew into something sacred, steady, soul deep. The kind of love that weathers storms, loses babies, raises babies, travels roads, fights, forgives, grows, and chooses each other again and again. In our younger days, he used to activate my nervous system, but then became the one and only person who could calm it. That's how deeply intertwined we were. We didn't just grow older together, we grew up together. 24 years of inside jokes, late night talks, hard lessons, healing, laughter, tears, and life unfolding side by side. And the feeling of the three of us together, the only word I've ever found that fits is just warm. It was warm walking through the door at the end of the day, and it was warm sitting next to him at Bella's basketball games, and it was warm riding in the car doing anything special. And we were the three musketeers. And that love, it doesn't end. It changes form, but it doesn't end. He taught me how to flow and how to laugh more and how to loosen the grip of perfection and just live. And here's the truth that I really want you all to hear. If you loved his humor, his warmth and his kindness, his laugh, then those qualities live in you too. Because you can't recognize light unless there is light within you. And his spirit didn't just live in him. It echoed in everyone he touched. We truly completed each other, even when Flicky and TV made their dramatic appearances. We were human, we were messy, we were real, but our love was a soul connection behind anything I could have imagined. It reminds me of the song that played at our reception, "In Your Eyes." Those lyrics about finding wholeness in the eyes of your beloved, they make more sense to me now than ever before. And those lyrics go like this. In your eyes, the light, the heat. In your eyes, I am complete. In your eyes, I see the doorway. In your eyes, to 1,000 churches. In your eyes, the resolution. In your eyes, of all the fruitless searches. In your eyes. And here's the thing. When I looked into Steve's eyes, I didn't just see him. I saw myself more clearly. I saw the doorway back to who I truly am. There are a million moments we had as a little family. And trying to distill 24 years into a few stories feels like trying to bottle sunlight. So when I asked Bella for her favorites, I realized something. Most of her memories of her dad involve laughter. Big, uncontrollable, can't breathe laughter, which feels exactly right. And here are some of Bella's favorites. So one time at Old Orchard Beach, I got sick. So Steve volunteered to go on the pirate ship ride, you know, the one that swings back and forth with Bella. Now, if you know Steve, you know he did not do rides that swung, flipped, dropped, or suggested the possibility of losing control of gravity. But for Bella, he'd do anything. So they get on this pirate ship, and it starts swinging her higher and higher, and this grown man starts doing deep, dramatic breathing exercises. True story, right? It was so intense and theatrical, Bella started laughing uncontrollably. And from that day forward, she wrote it just to watch him breathe, like he was preparing for labor. Bella also randomly remembers that when she was little, Steve would get irrationally passionate when she didn't color inside the lines. Like this man would look at a crayon drawing and act like she had just violated some sort of sacred artistic code. Bella, we stay in the lines. They're there for a reason. Meanwhile, she's like 3, just trying to draw a purple dinosaur with wings or something. All right, so let's talk about Cedar Point. We know he hated roller coasters, hated them. But again, he would go on to amuse us. So one day, while we were in the park, he got hangry. Dangerous territory, we know, and he found a barbecue place and sat down to eat. Now, Bella, being Bella, loved birds. She loved feeding them, chasing them, befriending them. And Steve warned her multiple times, Bella, don't feed the birds. The birds will poop on her food. She did not listen because she is very much her father's child. She kept tossing little pieces of food. The birds kept circling. And then, like slow motion cinematic moment of destiny, that bird flew right over us and pooped right on Steve's food. He lost his mind. That's what I told you not to do that. Meanwhile, I'm bursting out laughing, which of course ignites that famous little Irish spiciness, which makes Bella laugh even louder, and I'm pretty sure he stormed off in a dramatic protest. Well, we were both crying and laughing. So Uno in our house is not a game. It's a blood sport. Case in point, Bella insists she is the reigning champion and that Steve could never beat her. Steve, of course, maintained that he allowed her to win for confidence-building purposes, but I actually think Bella's correct. But Steve had this move, this theatrical Uno fake-out move he had. He'd yell, Uno, all confident, and then on his next turn, he'd dramatically start to slam his card down like he was all about to win. And then, like, last second, he'd pull it back and grin, that mischievous 5-year-old grin, and say nothing and just sit there with that goofy smile like he had just pulled off the greatest psychological trick in history. Now, there's this furniture place on 352 called Coons that always has a sign out front that says sale. Always. Perpetually on. It's like a permanent life event. There's always a sale at Coons. And for years, Steve and I would drive by and inside joke, dramatically guess, oh my God, Coons is having a sale. We need to stop. And even though the sign had been there for roughly a decade, we would do this all the time. Eventually, Bella caught on to our inside joke and joined in. So randomly at our house, whenever, someone would randomly, dramatically call out and freeze, guess what? Coons is having a sale. We need to get there. And the rest of us would act like this was breaking national news. Another classic Steve move is selective hearing. If I ever asked a question that even mildly suggested accountability, hey Steve, did you forget to take the trash down? He would instantly develop temporary hearing loss. And if I persisted, suddenly he'd go partially blind too. Squinting, looking around like he couldn't quite locate me in the room. It was like witnessing a very specific medical condition. And now Bella, bless her heart, has inherited this exact genetic trait. Bella, did you forget to pick up your laundry? Just like her father. And of course, we must address this very important detail. Clarke with an E. It's not just Clarke, it's Clarke with an E. It is the regal E, according to Steve, and he has reminded us very frequently that it is not just Clarke, it is Clarke with an E, because clearly somewhere in his lineage there had to be a king, a duke, or at minimum a very confident medieval gentleman who earned that extra vowel. So to this day, we still say it proudly. Clarke with an E, the regal E has to have the E. But beyond the laughter, beyond the jokes and the theatrics and the ridiculous little moments that filled our days, there was something sacred unfolding in the ordinary spaces of our life. Steve and Bella in the yard, tossing a ball back and forth, laughing, pretending to be competitive, but always letting her win in the end. And she knew what he was doing, and he knew she knew. And they both played along anyway, because that was their language of love. When she was little, he would pick her up after her after-school program, and every single day he'd squat down with his arms out as she ran up to him, and he'd scoop her up and swing her around in the air like she weighed nothing at all. And that was their ritual, their daily reunion, the feeling of being lifted, of being safe, of being cherished. She carries that one in her bones. And he loved when she would reach up and grab his hand while they walked. Little Bella and her dad, and when he was having treatments, when things were heavy and uncertain and scary, he would actually close his eyes and imagine that moment. Her small, reaching for his hand, and he told me it was one of his happiest places to go in his mind. One night, this past summer, after taking her to practice, he came home and said, "Bella reached over and held my hand again today, and I don't know if she'll ever understand how much that meant to me." Our lives were filled with long drives for travel sports, hours in the car that became our family time. We would dance and sing and be completely goofy just to make each other laugh. They'd sing Bruno Mars' "Marry Me" and other songs at the top of their lungs, off-key and proud like they were headlining a world tour. And he actually believed he had this incredible singing voice. Like, fully believed it. And one day I had a headache and I asked him to stop singing. And he looked at me dead serious, like, "What are you talking about? I have like the best voice there is." Later, he was determined to prove his point, and he recorded himself singing Elton John. He then played it back and slowly realized perhaps that he was not the rock star he had imagined. And he later came to me humbled and said, "Nick, I have to admit something. I'm really not as good of a singer as I thought." And he played the recording back, and we were both like, "Yeah." Bella and I are going to miss how he mispronounced words. He would always say strawburst instead of starburst, bobo instead of boba, potato instead of potato. And there were these little linguistic love notes sprinkled throughout the day that made our eyes roll and smile at the exact same time. Because what all of these moments taught me is the holiness of the ordinary, the sacredness of everyday life. The joy lives not in the grand milestones, but in the tiny, repetitive, seemingly insignificant interactions that slowly shape who we become. He was always trying to make us laugh, always trying to lighten the room, and every single time he'd land a joke, he'd look at me and say, "You love it." And even when I rolled my eyes, even when I pretended to be annoyed, the truth is I still really, really did. Steve was uniquely Steve. His laugh, his presence, his all-in approach to life. Everything was an event, a performance, and brought joy to every second. And nothing revealed this more than his relationship with our lawn. That man did not just mow the lawn, he curated it, he architected it, he had a full partnership with that grass, and he monitored a weather forecast on the hour, and if rain was predicted, he would rush home in time to make sure it got mowed. Because you see, mowing was not just mowing. There was a system, and there were angles and lines and directional passes, and then you had to lock in with one final ceremonial loop around the perimeter, and that was his last symbolic lap of mowing. God help me if I backed over a blade of grass. Nick, what? He also had a very particular gift for research. When Steve decided he needed something, he didn't just buy it. He entered a full investigative phase. For months, I heard about coffee beans, temperature, cups, freeze-dried, lids, insulation, environmental impacts, ergonomics, I'm surprised he didn't consult NASA. Then one day I go downstairs and find a box, like a survival bunker supply of maybe 1,000 coffee cups and lids. And I'm like, Steve, what is all of this? And without missing a beat, he's like completely serious. Well, if I use each one twice and buy in bulk, it's the best value. You get like 10 cents a cup that way. And let's talk about his comeback game. The man always had a response locked and loaded. His zingers. One time he accidentally took the worst candid photo of me known to mankind. My chin was down, he angled up, I was like mid-expression, and he didn't delete it. He holstered it, saved it. So one day I sent him a playful text poking fun at him, and within 2 seconds, it dings in that photo. Zoomed in, full screen, no caption, just psychological warfare, me like that. He had been waiting for that moment, patiently, strategically, for the perfect moment to strike. And beneath all the jokes and the one-liners, the goofy grins and the playful battles, Steve was, at his core, a profoundly good human being. And I know, right now, wherever he is, he's wearing that satisfied little smirk, the one that says, yep, I'm pretty great, that grin that followed every perfectly timed zinger, the grin that told me, you love it, even when I rolled my eyes and pretended I didn't. He lived to make me laugh, to lighten the weight of the world. He moved through life as if every second mattered, chasing joy, grabbing hold of it, refusing to let it slip away. He gave meaning through relentless presence, through showing up, through being fully alive. He pushed me to be braver, better, more myself. And I pushed him too. We sharpened each other, softened each other, grew together. Life with him was alive. It was full of belly laughs, inside jokes, and quiet moments only two people who truly know each other can share. I will miss the jokes no one else understood, how he completely knew me. I will miss him pointing out lettuce in my teeth and in the same breath reminding me I was beautiful. I will miss our movie quotes and our private language, and I will miss telling him that I'm the cutest crier he knew, even when I was falling apart. I will miss being the most important person in someone else's life, but more than anything, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for a love that changed me at my core, and I'm grateful for 24 years of laughter, growth, partnership, and devotion. I'm really grateful that I witnessed what it looks like when a human being chooses joy again and again, even in the face of unimaginable pain. And if this beautiful, brutal, sacred last 5 years taught us anything, it is this. Do not wait to love loudly. Do not wait to laugh fully. And do not wait to tell the people in your life how much they matter. Treasure the small things, the ordinary things, the everyday moments that seem insignificant until one day you realize they were everything. Steve taught me that joy is not found in the absence of hardship. It is forged in the decision to keep loving, keep laughing, and keep showing up anyway. Because the greatest legacy is the love and laughter we plant in the hearts of the people we leave here on earth. During the last 5 years since his diagnosis, we were given a strange and sacred gift, time. Time to talk about the unthinkable. Time to plan the details of goodbye, the meaning of a life. Steve wanted people to know something very specific about him. He wanted you to know that he did not start at the finish line. He started broken in places that the world never saw. He walked roads that swallow most people whole. And yet, he made it. Life had handed him circumstances that could have very easily defined him, defeated him, and finished him. Many people never recover from the kinds of situations he had to work his way out of. But Steve was never a man who stayed where he started. He worked, he grew, and he rebuilt. And the success he created was not the shallow kind the world applauds. It wasn't titles or status. It was richer than that, and it was deeper than that. It was love, and it was family, and it was laughter echoing through a home on an ordinary Tuesday night. It was showing up again and again until showing up became his signature on the world. And he was the very definition of a redemption story. And he was so proud of that life. And I'm so proud of him for that. Now let me tell you about another one of his greatest loves, coaching. It started innocently enough. Bella was tiny, playing YMCA sports, and Steve was on the sidelines chomping at the bit, leaning forward, whisper yelling a handful of helpful instructions to 4-year-olds just trying to figure out what direction they were supposed to run. And the moment they handed him a whistle, it was over. Because coaching wasn't about sports for him. It was about time travel. He got to go back and be the coach he needed when he was young. The one who saw potential before results. The one who didn't quit on the kid who was still figuring it out. The one who said, I see you. I believe in you. Now let's go to work. I found notebooks filled with names of little kids he coached. Next to every name were their strengths, their potential, little notes about confidence, mindset, skill gaps, accountability. He wasn't just watching games, he was studying souls. And if he coached your child, I need you to understand this. He loved them. He saw who they were and who they could become. He especially loved coaching girls. He became a champion for women's sports because he wanted every girl to know she was powerful, capable, and unstoppable long before the world tried to tell her otherwise. He believed sports built not just athletes, but strong, resilient human beings. And Bella wanted me to make sure everyone knows one very important thing. Her dad was an amazing coach. After the girls would accomplish something, like a basket, a great pass, or a defensive stop, you would hear his voice booming from the sidelines, full of joy. Yay, girls! Like they had just won the national championship instead of a kids' game. She loved that voice, and we all did. Now, you might occasionally see him pop up from his seat with his arms out, passionately offering what we politely call very direct feedback, but we knew because he knew what they were capable of, and he refused to let them settle for less. He believed in empathy and equally deeply in accountability. He has this sign from his grandparents that he treasured. It says, results, no excuses. That sign followed him everywhere. Every job, every office, every phase of his life, and now it hangs in our home. And to Steve, it meant this. Visualize your highest self, and then do the work required to become that person. No shortcuts, no blame, no excuses. He held himself to that standard, and he held Bella to that standard. And he lovingly held those kids to that standard too. And here's the part that still takes my breath away. Most of his coaching happened during the last 5 years. The years when cancer had metastasized. The years when his body was waging war just to stay upright. He would drive to Buffalo for treatments and appointments. He would sit for hours. Then he would get back in the car exhausted, nauseated, aching in ways I can't fully describe, and drive all the way home. And then he would grab his bag, walk into the gym or on the field, and coach kids with full intensity, full laughter, and full presence, like nothing in the world was wrong. Because to him, those girls deserved the very, very best version of himself, not the sick or the tired version. There were days he cried from the pain on the way home, quiet tears, private battles, and then he would walk through that door, smile, crack a joke, and get to work. That was his strength, his discipline. That was his love in action. Results, no excuses. So today, if you ever wonder what to do with your one fragile, beautiful life, think of who you know you can become, and then in his honor, align. Just do it. no excuses. And this all reminds me of a very special song between Bella and her father. One that played over and over and over again on our car rides. A rap song, Till I Collapse by Eminem. And those lyrics really resonate. Because sometimes you just feel tired. You feel weak. And when you feel weak, you feel like you just want to give up. But you got to search within you. Try to find that inner strength and just pull that shit out of you. And get that motivation to not give up. And not be a quitter. No matter how bad you want to just fall flat on your surface and face collapse. And then the chorus. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out, I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. And that was Steve. And I'm not rapping it. In the final week of Steve's life, we unknowingly stepped into sacred time. We didn't realize these would be the last days his voice would echo through our home. But something in our souls kind of knew. So we opened our doors and we invited love in many forms. Faith, spirit, wisdom, presence, and we surrounded Steve with meaning. The first to come was Father Matthew Walter. He walked in wearing a Bills hat and instantly thought, okay, he gets us. Father sat with Steve, and they didn't talk about doctrine or death. They talked about life, about stories, about being human. And then I heard Steve ask with full sincerity, so how does this whole celibacy thing work anyway? I actually froze and looked up, and I kind of did that head tilt of my eyes. And I just thought, of course you did. Of course. This is what you would ask Father during your final period on earth. But that was Steve. He did not perform conversations. He had them fully, honestly, even when the topic was edgy, even when it challenged belief systems. He had wanted to understand, to connect, to grow. He was genuine. Steve was as authentic as it gets. Father later said it was one of the most real conversations he had ever had with somebody at the end of their life. And that's who Steve was until his very last breath. Real, genuine, brave enough to ask the questions everyone else was too afraid or conditioned to ask. And Father anointed him, blessing him, leaving us with a prayer to St. Joseph that now hangs in our home, not as a relic of a goodbye, but as a witness to love that walked with us through the threshold of life and death. Then came Denny, family friend, man of deep Christian faith, who has spent his life turning heartbreak into service. Our house was chaos that day he came, and right in the center of that storm, Denny sat calmly beside Steve on the couch, like an anchor dropped into turbulent waters. Steve asked him for one thing: please sing Amazing Grace. The same song Denny had sung years ago when Steve's grandmother and father passed. The same melody that had once held him through grief now came back to hold him again, full circle. Grace, that unearned love that finds us when we are lost, that heals what we thought was beyond repair, that turns guilt into freedom and fear into trust, that leads us home to our truest selves. And Denny reminded us of his own story, how his early heartbreak redirected his entire life from accounting to ministry. Pain, when transformed, becomes purpose. And that was the lesson. That was the offering. That was the seed planted in those sacred hours. Then there was Jeff, a family friend in Georgia, who didn't have the chance for a final phone call because Steve declined so rapidly. But their connection lived through text, calls, moments of truth exchanged across distance. Months earlier, Jeff had told Steve to find joy even in the hardest spaces, to notice unseen people, the ones who quietly clean the rooms, who move through life without applause, and to pour love into them. And wouldn't you know, after Steve's surgery at Roswell in October, the person he connected with the most was the man who cleaned his hospital room. He was a quiet man. He was kind. He was one of very, very deep faith, and they talked and they laughed. And one day he closed the door, and the three of us, Steve, myself, and him, we all prayed together. It felt like Morgan Freeman kind of showing up in Bruce Almighty, ordinary on the outside, divine magnitude on the inside. A reminder that God, love, spirit, whatever name you choose, often arrives disguised as the people we are trained to overlook. And then came Seamus, a spiritual clinician rooted in naturopathic and Eastern traditions, who only entered Steve's life in his final moments, but he really changed everything. Proof that someone does not need decades to transform you. Sometimes a few sacred conversations are enough to unlock a lifetime of healing. They spoke about surrender, not giving up, but laying down the armor, allowing grace, truth, and love to carry what you no longer have the strength to hold. And that paradoxical power, when you stop grasping, you actually finally receive. And when you stop resisting, transformation begins. He reminded Steve about self-love, not ego or indulgence, but the sacred recognition that your soul is worthy simply because it exists. That you are created with intention, held in love by the divine, deserving of gentleness, even in your most broken of moments. In his final days, those 4 sacred encounters became a chorus of truth. Father showed us the power of raw authenticity and the courage to ask hard questions. Denny reminded us that our deepest wounds can be alchemized into purpose through unwavering faith. Jeff proved that love is steady presence, finding light even in the darkest rooms. Seamus taught us that true strength is surrender, laying down the armor, and choosing radical self-love when the soul is most fragile. And together they revealed this: live openly, love fiercely, stay connected, trust the unseen, and even suffering can become sacred, and grief becomes a doorway through which love expands forever. Now, I really need people to understand something. Truly, those last 5 years, they weren't just suffering. They were a blessing. The illness did take from his body, but it also gave in ways that most people will never experience. It made time visible. It forced him inward, where he discovered a truth so powerful it changed everything. He was enough, exactly as he was, and so are you. His illness forged legacy in real time. It imprinted Bella with emotional safety, courage, and identity that will outlive any diagnosis. It bonded our family in a depth most people never reach. We loved harder. We forgave faster. We spoke truths we might have otherwise postponed for someday. There is no someday. There is not. There is only now. And those years gave Steve the chance to flood Bella with a fatherly love and an intensity that could power her entire lifetime. They gave him the space to heal wounds from his own past. That time broke me open too. It cracked my heart. It deepened my spirit and opened my voice so I could actually speak the love that had always lived inside me, but waited for courage. What a gift those 5 years were. And in June of 2022, doctors told us he had less than 1% chance to live throughout the year. Less than 1% chance. And yet he lived, and he laughed, and he coached, and he loved, and he defied statistics, and reminded us that miracles are not myths. They are moments science cannot fully explain, but the soul immediately recognizes. I saw his body do things that made no logical sense. I watched a life return when hope should have logically retreated. And at that time, that extra time, it was a miracle that we got to live inside. So no, his greatest achievements were not worldly milestones. They were of the heart, of the spirit. A man who rose from darkness to become a devoted husband, an extraordinary father, a loyal friend, and a soul so expanded by love that even death cannot contain him. All of the tears that are falling today are not evidence of sadness. They are evidence of love, and love overflowing its physical container. Steve and I were the best pair. We came here, like all souls do, to learn, to grow, and to love. And that is exactly what he did. For me, for Bella, and so many of you. Pain can either use us or we can use it. We can let it harden us or we can alchemize it into purpose. I choose healing, and I choose purpose, and I choose love. He was mapped into the architecture of my very self. He helped shape who I am. And because of that, he will live on in every word I speak, in every act of kindness I extend, in every courage or truth I dare to say. So please, speak his name boldly. Tell the stories. Laugh about him. Keep him alive in the way only souls truly remain on earth, through shared memory carried by community. Feel everything. Sit with it. Let it move through you fully. And then ask yourself, what is this grief trying to build in me? Because grief is just love with nowhere physical to land. So redirect it. Use it. Create something beautiful with it. Go live your life, not to suppress the pain, but to honor the magnitude of love that created it. You have the power to heal and to create, to rewrite the future of your life in ways that you've never imagined. And Bella, listen. You did not lose your dad. Your dad gave you 13 years of a fierce, beautiful, unconditional love that is now written into your DNA. Your spirit and your way of being in this world that can never be taken from you. You were and always will be his greatest joy. You completed our world just by being you, and that is pure light. You are pure light. I want you to stay soft, to stay radiant and live fully. Don't just exist, live abundantly. Love yourself deeply. Love others courageously. That is how you carry your dad forward. And to everyone listening to me today, if you truly want to honor Steve, go heal yourself. Love your people. Call the person you've been meaning to call. Tell people you love them while they can still hear you. Choose purpose over resentment. Choose connection over pride. Chase what makes you feel alive. Give more than you take. Laugh loud. Show up fully. Hold nothing back. Be real. Be grateful. Choose love over fear. Because in the end, love is the only thing that outlives us. And Steve was love.